Yeah, hi. My questions deal with cycling, and I wonder what your relationship in Pittsburgh is with Bike Pittsburgh and what sort of activities you think work. And from the building designer, whether you have any thoughts about how you build to try and encourage people to ride.
Sure. We are fortunate enough to have a bike and pedestrian coordinator on staff in our Department of City Planning. So I actually, luckily, don't have to take on all of the biking sort of things, but he and I work closely together to look at how we can encourage non-motorized transportation. And we are fortunate enough to have the nonprofit Bike Pittsburgh, who has operated in our city for, gosh, I don't know, 5 or 10 or maybe more years, probably close to 7. And they provide a lot of leadership, and before we actually had somebody dedicated to bike and pedestrian issues on staff, they lobbied to the city, they lobbied to the county for why we need to have bike paths, why we should have safe storage for bikes, why it's important to enforce traffic laws so that people riding bicycles or walking feel safe. And so we work really closely together, and one project that we're trying to develop right now, and it's really just still in its dreaming phases, but hopefully within a year or so it'll really get moving, is a new program called Bike Pittsburgh Certified Workplace. And it would be grant funded and run through the nonprofit with the city as a partner. We're for our large corporation headquarters we have in town, for retail spaces, you name it, any business operating in the city. They could come in and kind of give you a checklist. If you want to be a bike-friendly employer, these are things you have to consider. It doesn't mean you have to install showers, but there's other things that could be worth equal points that you could balance out to make sure that you're making it as easy as possible for your employees to come into work. And what we'd like to do is have the city be their pilot employer who gets certified. So we're working right now at looking at what all that would require on our part. So.
That's cool. From a building design standpoint, there is a LEED credit for providing bike racks and showers, although it's often made fun of because it's equal to, let's say, reducing energy consumption. Right. But the main thing is that we have to make sure we plan for it early on in the design process and make sure to try to include secure storage, particularly in an urban environment. That would really encourage people to bike more. Kind of on a side note, I actually kind of researched the benefits of cycling and found one study that was done that showed that because people live longer from cycling, they actually would increase energy consumption over a lifetime of so
you are thinking way too much about this.
Yeah, so I'm not saying, I'm not endorsing that report, but it's just another, going back to the point before about it being very hard to make decisions.
Wow, all right. Yeah. Well, that's definitely a great perspective. Thanks.
Yes, your example reminds me, we had a speaker here 2 months ago in Cleveland, Donovan Ripcom, who's a lead advocate nationwide on historic preservation. And he was troubled by some of the LEED scoring. He brought the example. He showed a project where they demolished the building, but actually got a higher LEED score because they recycled the building's materials into the walkways around what they built new, and that they had bike racks was a higher score than saving the building, which was historic. So my question is about transitioning some of the scoring that's done, but also integrating a historic preservation strategy fully into a LEED scoring system.
As a company, we feel that the LEED kind of rating system is important. It has transformed the market and kind of really encouraged designers to focus on some key things to make sure that those big things are not ignored. But what we try to do is also design outside of the LEED framework to ensure that those types of decisions don't get made where you tear down a building and build something brand new, and it doesn't make as much sense as trying to reuse. There is kind of a fascination with the new and shiny. People, in terms of, let's say, fundraising, want to put their name on some brand new project. They don't want to do like the memorial steam pipe or chiller or something that's upgraded. So we try to make sure we look at it outside the LEED framework. In terms of having LEED make more sense, it was recently revised so that the points were reweighted with much more emphasis on climate change impacts. And so the bike rack credit is still 1 point, but the whole system's out of 110 rather than 69. So there's some change, and there is definitely a recognition that there are issues. But we like to track energy actually as a separate thing.
Yeah. Before working at the city, I did historic restoration and LEED certification, so managed projects that integrated meeting National Historic Preservation Office's requirements for tax credits as well as getting the LEED. And there are some inconsistencies and frustrations with the LEED process. I think one in particular that I, at a fundamental level, that I had challenging with was the bike rack one, where you get a point for a bike rack and you get a point for remediating a brownfield. You know, a bike rack costs $500, a brownfield is $2 million, $3 million, and so it made it harder for urban brownfield projects to get LEED points than another project. But that being said, there's a lot. I mean, LEED is very flexible. There's a lot of points. There's points for public transportation. There's points for there's many ways of getting to the score that you're trying to get to from a lot of different paths to get there. So the fundamental choice there there may have been, that frustration that, oh, we got more points by tearing it down, but there ultimately, from the owner's perspective, there was a reason why they wanted the building torn down. And it's trying to educate and help people understand the benefits of preserving these buildings and not just focusing the blame on a system. I mean, all systems are imperfect, so. And I think, looking at Cleveland and looking at our fabric of our buildings, it's important to recognize the importance of preserving the architectural significance of buildings from multiple periods. And that's something we have here that a lot of communities don't. And so to understand that, the importance of that of creating a healthy, diverse community of buildings rather than having a mono landscape of one period. If we have a mono landscape of one period of buildings, we're everywhere in America. So.
Great point.
This question's for Lindsay and Andrew. Can you identify any initiatives that your cities are working on that are low-hanging fruit that will be transformative in terms of sustainability?
That's a good question. I don't know if this is exactly low-hanging fruit, but it's not a crazy innovative technological fix. We need to do a lot of work on our building stock. We have over 300 buildings that we own as a city, and they're very old for the most part. We have had a lot of economic trouble for several years. We're on our way coming out of it, but because of that, we have transferred some money out of our building maintenance funds, and so they're suffering from deferred maintenance. And quite frankly, only the necessary fixes have been made to the buildings over the past several years. We haven't been looking at, well, if we change this now, we could save a whole lot of money on energy. It's been like, let's patch this and hope that it works. And so right now, especially with some of the funding that's available through the Recovery Act, we're looking at how we could use that to help us fund what truly is low-hanging fruit. Just changing out lights, changing out heating and cooling systems that have lived their useful life to something that's much more efficient. Technologies that we know work and save us money, and looking at how we can use some of the stimulus funding to really jumpstart a whole program where we're trying to quantify and capture what those savings are from our energy bills and roll it into a way to do this sort of maintenance that we haven't had an opportunity to do. I wish I had something bright and flashy and glamorous to tell you about, but really it's nuts and bolts sort of work like that we're pretty excited about right now.